Hello, welcome to Wednesday's Heart Wisdom panel. We have a special Be a Helper panel today, and we're actually getting extra support today, which I'm going to let one of my very special guests, Sherry Riker Blue, introduce in a second. First, I will introduce myself. I am Rachael Wolff. I am the author of Letters from a Better Me, How Becoming an Empowered Woman Transforms the World. And I am so happy to be able to facilitate this event today. I am not the usual facilitator. Our special guest, one of our special guests, Sherry Riker Blue, usually does this. And we're supported by Mango Publishing. And we also have a special supporter today that I'm going to let Sherry introduce us and tell us about.
Yes, hello. So as well as being hosted by Mango Publishing, this event is also being hosted by Reimagine. And I just want to share with you just two very, very short things about Reimagine in case you're not familiar with them. I know some people may be here from Reimagine. Their mission is Reimagine envisions a world in which we are all able to reflect on why we're here, prepare for a time when we won't be, and live fully right up to the end. And during these special COVID-19 events, which this one is a part of, we're all reading the same passage to begin the events. And I think you guys will really love this. There is no life without death, no love without loss. They're in constant complementary motion. But never before in our lives has the world stood so still. In the face of distance, illness, and isolation, we are here together, reimagining a changed world, kinder, slower, more just. We are reimagining the giving and receiving of love, the cycles of loss and new beginnings, and what it means to be fully alive. We are here. So thank you to Reimagine for being a part of hosting this special event. And I'll turn it back to you, Rachael. Thank you for hosting today.
So with that, I'm going to let our other special guest introduce himself, because if you want to talk about helpers, this is the man. So let's go.
So,
You want to show us your book too?
Sure. Here you go. My book, Find the Helpers, and I'm happy to be joining you all again. I am Fred Guttenberg, and I wrote my book following the loss of my daughter, who was a victim of gun violence, who was murdered in Parkland, Florida. But my story didn't begin there, because 4 months prior, my brother died from cancer related to his service in 9/11. And as a family, that was our first real time dealing with grief. I'm one of 5 kids. My parents are still alive. It was just not part of our story. And so when my brother died, it was traumatic. I was going through what I thought was the worst thing ever in my adult life until my daughter was murdered. And several months after she was murdered, I started writing this book. Ultimately, it evolved and developed into a helper's book, but not the first draft. When I got done writing it, my story was what it is. It was my story. It was someone else who I shared it with, who I trust implicitly, who said, "You need to keep writing. There's more here." I read this, and everywhere in this book are these examples of other people who were there for you. I want to know more about them. And so I spent the next 6 months rewriting my book, and it evolved into the reality where I don't go forward. I don't get through this without all these amazing other people, hence the evolution of the book into Find the Helpers. Um, you know, you mentioned there is no grief without love. I actually opened the book talking about grief is love, no place to go. And so I just think, I hope that as people read my book, no matter what they're going through, no matter what happened, no matter who it was, we always have our path forward. We always have a way to go forward, but to do it with others. And never do I need that message to resonate across this country more than now, with all of the loss that we are going through and all of the families who are losing loved ones every hour of every day because of COVID. So that's my story. And I look forward to talking to you further about it.
Ah, Fred, I am so happy you're here with us today again, and so we can dive deeper into your book and to the helpers and you as a helper. You know, your book touches, I feel like it touches so deep right now because we are in a state of loss on so many different levels.
Yeah.
And we are relying on helpers to get us through. And I feel like there's so many people in need to see that none of us are alone. We don't have to be alone. We're in a technical age that we don't have to be alone. And I think, with what you have gone through, it really helps open the doors to see that, to see that.
Well, and it's part of the reason why we end the book with a resource section for people to go to. Because, listen, hopefully we have people who are a regular part of our life that would be the first ones we would go to. People who love us, who we love, who are family or friends. But you know what? For those who are unsure or who don't think they have someone that close that they can talk to, there's places of worship and there's organizations all around this country who will be there for you. Google is your friend. You know, just last week, I did one of my events. It was actually through my old alma mater, Skidmore College and Saratoga Bookstore. And the person interviewing me, believe it or not, was my old college professor from back in 1985. And I tell you this because one of the people who asked a question was a woman whose husband had committed suicide and she was struggling. And during the course of the conversation, I just asked for the bookstore to please connect us outside of that call. And we actually spoke today for quite a while. And, listen, this is how we get through stuff like this. We do it together. We reach out. My story is my story of my helpers. But you know what? It's my job to also make sure I'm there to be a helper. It's all of our jobs to be open to helpers in our lives when we need it, but to also make sure we're being helpers to others when we can.
Absolutely. With that, I want Sherry to introduce herself and her book, because what you do and the Love You show is so very helpful. And so I want to take this conversation even deeper after that. So I'll let you do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad that everyone is here with us. My book is called Say It Now, and it is 33 creative ways to say, I love you to the most important people in your life. And some of you know this, but maybe others don't. The reason it's called Say It Now is that throughout my life, when I would go to funerals and people bring out all the photos and the appreciations and the love and the stories, I would bask in that and really love that. But I would always say, why don't we say this when people can hear it? Why don't we have this outpouring when people are alive? And that's a really important part of my mission, is to encourage people. And the book is simple ways they're what I consider to be a lot of like creative and fun ways that may be a little different, and ways that reflect to somebody not just that I love you, but those specific reasons why we love someone and why they matter so much to us. Because I think there's something really deep inside all of us that we long to know that we matter, and not because of the awards or the accolades or what we do, but really just for who we are. And so even though this book does sort of specifically say, for the people that you love best, I actually use a lot of these ideas for people that I've just met. I try to really expand, like what I call to expand the container of love. To offer, I write letters to strangers a lot. I use, I'll send voice notes to people that I don't know, voice notes that appreciate things about people. And I think it's one of the things that we can bring into this bigger discussion is all the different ways we can be a helper. And I think a lot of those ways, just like Fred was just saying, it's looking out into the world with fresh eyes to see who needs us.
Oh, Sherry, that's such a great point. Especially now, like I've just noticed so many more people now. You can kind of see where people are, and just like Fred picked up on that woman's pain and then felt that need to reach out further. It's like when we are open, like Fred said, when we are open to see it, we get to do that. And and Sherry, you have given so many examples of how open you are with some of the things you do to celebrate love. And the helpers that present themselves to you, and then that you get to help. It's just funny how the universe works that way. There's this beautiful balance when you open yourself up to those things. Fred, I want to go back to you for a minute, because you were talking about the phone call. And I remember in your book, you talked about a very special phone call too. And it was after your daughter died. And I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit more about that with this group.
Well, I'm assuming you're talking about the next president. And, I write in the book not only about the phone call, but about the conversation that we had and how the advice he gave me to this day is still the most meaningful, important advice that anybody has given me. He reached out about 10 days after Jaime was killed. And at the time, he wasn't vice president. He wasn't running for anything. He was actually overseeing his son Bill Biden's foundation. Now, remember, this is a man who knows laws. He left a message, because I was not picking up phone calls from phone numbers I didn't recognize because my phone was going crazy. And he left a message, and he said who he was. Hi, Fred. This is Joe Biden. Just calling to check in. I am going to call you back at exactly 6 o'clock. If you want to talk to me, make sure you pick up the phone. If you don't, I understand. Truly an empathetic approach. And of course I did. And we spoke for about 45 minutes. He wanted to know about me, my wife, my son, and about my daughter who was behind me. He wanted to know how they were doing, how I was doing. And he wanted to talk to me about what to expect. And he also wanted to know what my plan was going forward. And when I told him my plan, I said, I don't really know yet how I intend to do this, but I intend to break the effing gun lobby. That led to a conversation on mission and purpose that has formed the foundation of what I do. We then had a follow-up meeting in person a few weeks later that again was fairly lengthy. And he came prepared to that meeting to talk to me about grieving, but not just my own personal grieving, about what other people grieving are going through and how we don't all do it the same way, which was amazing to me that he came prepared for that conversation, because he wanted to talk to me specifically about my wife and my son. And he wanted me to know most marriages fall apart after something like this. He didn't tell me that to scare me. He told me that because he wanted me to be prepared. He wanted me to know it's okay that we're going to do this differently, but we have to find ways to support one another and to do it together. Um, he is an amazing, and to this day, I'm honored to say um, that I have had this chance to talk to him in this way. This country is lucky to have him as the next president of the United States.
Your story hit me so hard because for me, it's very important for me to vote for someone, not a political party, not a policies, all that stuff. It's about voting for someone because I believe character is, we need character and we need somebody who sees our country as a whole.
Yeah.
And so when you told that story and to know that it wasn't publicized, that, the only person who knew about it at the time was you. It just showed the true person. And I love seeing people and seeing humans and being able to, and you talked about this in the book of talking about politicians in this all category of all politicians are bad. And,
But
and
it's
you
not that
saw
way.
them as the person.
Yeah.
You got to learn to see them as the person, to see the good people that take up, this for the right reasons. And so that's why I felt like your book was so important to me, is because it was like, yes, seeing the humans, seeing the people, because that's so important because people, our humanity is everything.
Listen, people have a habit of saying about politicians, if you disagree with something they did, that they stink, they're bad, they're dishonest because we disagree with something that they made a decision about. But they're not bad. They're not all dishonest. Some are, just like some business people are and some athletes.
Oh no. Okay, hopefully he will come back soon.
Oh, you lose me?
Okay.
Am I there?
Yeah, we're here. You cut
Okay.
off right as you were saying about, there's some bad people in every
Yeah, and my internet is being unstable today, so I apologize. Listen, there are bad people in every walk of life, but they're not all bad. And am I there?
Yep.
Okay, because I'm getting that unstable message again. And so what I want to say is I've met really great people in politics. I've met bad ones, but I've met really great, decent, honest people who want to do wonderful things. And what I would say is the best way we could support them is to accept the fact that this is the country we live in. The best way to ensure we get the most out of them is that we vote. Nothing matters more than voting. We, as Americans, have done a terrible job of that because not enough of us have voted. But if we show up and vote, we'll have more decent people in politics.
Yeah, and right now it's like to see the difference, the juxtaposition of somebody who's really trying to unite us is and be a helper. Like, talk about a helper and to see it so personally, it's just such a different level. It's not about a show, it's about personally. Barack Obama told this story of how he takes the time in a line and he would be following way behind because he wants to have a full conversation with each person. And it just reminded me so much of your story, and that shows the heart. And I think it's a humanity problem that if we can't see somebody's goodness just because of a group that they're in. whether it's politics or not. And it's the same thing with, you know, positive Republicans that do good things. It's if we can't see the good that they're doing just because they're in a group, then that's a humanity problem.
And that then becomes reinforcing, because what happens? Then you stop talking to them.
Yeah.
And if we don't talk, you know, that, you know, we only reinforce those notions, even if it's not right.
Yeah. Sherry, let's add some love sprinkles to this.
Happy to comply. Which shall we go? Anywhere?
You know, you are somebody who sees the humanity in people. You know, you really, when you talk to people, you really listen and you look for the humanity in the person that you're talking to. Can you kind of tell us about that? Because you have a way of looking at people it makes the receiver feel so appreciated. So I would love to hear from you on that.
I love that question, Rachel. Thank you, because that's actually hugely important to me. That I come from a spiritual tradition where we practice very diligently to look for the good, to look for the positive, to look for the right, instead of, you know, our reptilian brains are constantly on the lookout for what's wrong and judgment. And so I feel so fortunate to have many years of practice. And a piece of this is something that I'm just going to throw in here because it's dropping in, which is one of my favorite gifts, which is called a love list, which is a list of specific reasons we love someone. And that practice of making love lists taught me how to intentionally and in a very focused way look for the love, to look for what is so good. And I mean, look at these faces. Whenever I'm on this panel, I look at your faces and I just see such goodness, right? And I think it's the combination of my spiritual practice and being trained as a coach, because as a coach, you see the dreams people have, right? You can see the possibility for people. And so for me, it's a delight to be able to be with people and to really truly focus on their heart, their goodness, you know, what they've done, who they love, you know, their quirky ways, their dreams. And I do think it's a practice. I feel like you know, in my book, I probably use that word 1,000 times, because to me, love is a practice. And being able to, as I said earlier, expand the container of love, to expand the ways that we love, to constantly look for how we can love in ways that we've never imagined. That's where it's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about that, because, and that you say mission too. I love the word mission. You know, and Fred, you use that too. And I love that word because I have that same thing as, you know, when I got to this place in my life where my mission was to live life from a loving place. So that's what the name of my blog is. That's my Facebook page. It's From a Loving Place, because my mission is to do that daily practice like you were talking about. It's that daily practice of, okay, how do I face things, even the ugly stuff, from a loving place? Like, even when I'm in pain, how do I hug that pain with love? You know, how do I so it's that way of how that's the more I practice, the more compassion I have for others, the more I can see the human, and the more I appreciate when, like, Fred, you wrote this book. I feel like because I'm so focused on seeing that way, your book touched me so incredibly deep to be able to really hear the stories of all the individuals. And I know I said this before, but it's like, I love seeing the human in people.
But that's why, for me, focusing the book on those people became so important, because we all have those people, but we don't necessarily think about our lives as being that deeply connected to others on a regular basis. I do now. The idea that I have that is what carries me forward. But I didn't before. I just, I had my friends, I had my family. I didn't think about it as I rely on these people, and maybe if I would have said that to people before, maybe that sounds weak to some, I don't know, but I never thought of it that way, but I do. I need my people. And you know what? I'm okay with that. They carried me. I'm okay because of them. And so as we go through COVID and as more families go through loss, if more people start to think about how connected we are and how much we need each other, then we get to go through this together and help each other.
Sherry, I feel like you have something to say to that one.
Wow.
Because I'm like,
Fred, oh, bless you. Yes, right? I think, so when you were talking, I was thinking that that's exactly it, is that all too often, and maybe it's our culture for many of us or the way we were raised, but it's our people, our immediate family or our extended family, our friends, and we forget that our people are everyone. And I think that's where the heart of it is. This is what's dropping in, so I'm going to say, but I had this beautiful thing happen for my birthday. I write letters to strangers. So people will say to me, so-and-so has a child who died, or this person is going through cancer or whatever. Could you write them a letter? And a woman reached out to me who said her mother she was in her 80s. She is in her 80s, had been unhappy all her life. And she said, my mother's been unhappy all her life, and I feel like her time is coming soon, and I don't want her to die without feeling some love and light, and just the most beautiful. I encouraged this woman to tell me like all kinds of things she loved about her mom, and I wrote the letter. And by the time her mom got the letter, she was in the hospital. And I do feel like this is probably her last days. And it was just some fortuitous thing that she got this letter, and she read the letter, and she said to her daughter, that is the best thing that has ever happened to me. This is the most important thing I've ever heard. And it wasn't me. It was her daughter. It was her daughter's love, but I got to be a part of it. And it teaches me, like, I love that person's mother as much as anybody, right? I don't know. I didn't have to meet her. And it's this idea that, like what Fred was saying, that we have to open up. I mean, I just love when you said that, Fred. We have to open up and know that the person we cross on the street is part of our people, and to remember to offer them. I know it's hard to see each other's smiles right now, but a cheery wave or a kind word, because that's part of being a helper, I think, is helping when we don't even know it. We don't even know that the person we're passing might need something energetic from us.
Listen, I think the first person I highlight in my book is a helper. I think she's first. Is someone I've never met, and someone who means more to my family than she'll ever know. And she's the person who on 9/11 went to where the triage set up. I mean, she walked through rubble. There was dust and debris flying around, but she knew those first responders probably had families that needed to hear something. And she went with pen and paper and just said, give me a name and a number, and I will call them for you. And this woman called my parents. It was the first sign of life we had from my brother. We had already assumed, because this is late in the afternoon that day, that he had died on 9/11 until we heard from this woman. Never met her. I'll never know her. She's one of the great helpers of my life.
I love that story. I had waterfalls coming out of my eyes when I read that story. I having family up there too, it was such a trying day because you didn't know who was there and who wasn't. And yeah, that story just and that's the thing about being a helper. You have to show up. You have to be open to show up. And when we show up, that showing up is contagious. And that's what's so beautiful about it. It's just this contagious way of helping. So I want to open it up to the rest of the group to see if there's any questions, because I have a feeling we could just go on and on. So is there any questions from anybody out there? Comments? Linda.
One of the things that strikes me is that that you both have said that the helper doesn't have to be, you don't have to strive to be the helper that saves everybody. You know, the one person who made that phone call, or the letter you wrote to that one, to your friend's mom, you can make such a big impact on somebody's life with something that to you seems very small. And, you know, sometimes we get caught up in, well, I have to save the world or whatever it is, you know, it has to be big. When you can do little things every day that could touch somebody else's life, touch somebody's heart. And this is a really wonderful reminder that it doesn't have to be a big grand gesture. It can be little everyday things. So thank you for that reminder.
Linda, I love, if it's okay, I'm just going to jump in because I love you, because you show up to these heart panels all the time, and you offer always such beautiful, thoughtful responses and comments. And I know I've said this before, but I want to say it again because I think this is key. That's being a helper, right? Like what you do and what you just offered, you know, like you said, you have to show up, and that showing up doesn't have to look, just like you just said, it doesn't have to look heroic, but that we can show up in everyday ways like this. And I think that's a great example. It's for all of you, right? All of you who are here, you're bringing your love and your attention and your focus, and that's helping everyone else, because we learn from each other, I think, energetically as well. It doesn't even have to, we don't even have to say anything.
Yep.
That's what I love about these meetings, is because I leave on a high. So it's like, I feel like I'm spreading good vibes just out, just whoever I'm thinking of, I'm spreading good vibes. And I've started to actually, when I'm in these kind of really, really good moods, I try to think of people that I know need them. That's what I've been trying to do lately, is try to really focus my energy on them, to just send them like that level of good energy, because I know right now it's tough. You know,
Well,
some people are really struggling.
and the good news is, in 40 something days, we'll have a president who's going to model this, who's going to model empathy, passion, decency towards one another. So while for so many right now, it's just very hard to feel that, we're going to have someone in the White House who will model it, who will model the idea of just showing up, being there for each other. You know, sometimes it's the smallest things that make the biggest difference. And, you know, when I look back on the people in my life, it is some of those small, unexpected things that came at the perfect moment that mattered the most, you know? So just be there.
That is such a great point, Fred. You know, it is, it's just in a moment. I mean, it could be a line from a book. It could be a person that says something. It can be just the littlest thing, and it can create this shift. It's really amazing how that can happen. Mary, you said, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I had a question for Fred. I'm used to being the helper. I'm really good at that part, but the hard part is accepting help, because I think I have to do it all myself. Did you have a problem with that?
You know, it is a great point. And throughout the book, I talk about the importance of opening yourself up to receiving help and allowing others to be there for you. When I I will tell you, in the year after Jaime was killed, I didn't think about it in terms of opening myself up to help from others, but I was getting it. And it was only in hindsight that I realized how much people had done for me and how I would not have gotten through it without them. And so it changed me. It really did. And now I'm very open to allowing others to have a different kind of a relationship with me. I'm okay with people checking you. Now, I will tell you, there are limits. And I kind of have a rule which I call permission to be honest. Sometimes you start having conversations with people, and while they're well intentioned, they may want to do things that isn't necessarily going to be helpful for you, or ask you things that aren't, and it's okay to let them know that. And so, but no, listen, my life is forever changed because of the value of what others did for me, and it'll never go back to the way it was.
So powerful. That, and that's such a great point too, is it, once you start receiving, you shift just in that. Brenda, did you have something?
I did. So, as an editor, I like to, or I try to like cast my mind forward to what are readers going to need like a year down the road, a couple years down the road. And I believe that right now we're sort of all collectively, like even globally, like going through like a collective grief. And I feel like there's a lot of PTSD. I mean, I joke to my friends that I turn on MSNBC and then like get PTSD and like have to like take a break and have tea. But there's a lot of what's extra sad about what's happening with the pandemic and COVID is there's a lot of death that doesn't need to happen. So what are people going to need after this? Like, what can we do? Like, that's a helper question, but like, what can I, as an editor acquiring for Mango, do to be a helper, to give people tools, books, resources they're really going to need to get through and process this?
That's a great question. And my first thought is this. When I went to publish my book, I had a lot of publishers say, we don't want to do more books that have to do with gun violence. Even though gun violence is a worsening problem in this country. And so as an editor and as someone for Mango, even this whole pandemic thing and the after effects are going to go on for a long time. I would tell you to be open to those who have taken the time to write down how they got through it, and where there may be help in their story for someone else, to constantly considering it. That's one piece of advice I would give you, because, COVID, eventually we're going to get over this hump, but the damage is going to go on for years.
Yeah, I like that. Definitely.
Well, and I think that books that offer positive support, and like Fred's, like Sherry's, that are about, and so you're so good at picking these books anyway. You pick books, you naturally pick books that have the helpers that show, I don't think I've read a Mango book yet that doesn't have a line in it that helped me. Do you know what I mean? Like a one-liner, those kind of things that help. And so that's what you pick anyway. So just trust your instinct, I think, is the biggest thing, is because you already have it. You already you know, having listened to so many of your authors and
Mhm.
heard them speak and seen their books,
Right.
I was very happy to be a part of this family because of that.
We're so happy to
Because,
have you and
well,
all of you.
yes.
I mean, I do like people that know me well, like Debbie and Nita, and maybe all of you by now, like they know I run on intuition. And so like 2 and 3 years ago, I started acquiring books on grief. Because I mean, we published like 5 books on grief, like in the last 12 months.
Wow.
And like, I had no idea. None of us had any idea. And like, I'll just sometimes just go, wow, how did that happen? But I'm so glad it did because it's so needed. We just need to process. It's the processing, I think, that like the processing, the truth of it, the experience of it, that only by that can you heal.
Well, and the grief that people are feeling, that the country is feeling, people are so wrapped up right now in the insanity of the political process, as well as the ongoing pandemic, that once Biden comes and once the pandemic settles down because everybody's getting their shots, that's when people are really thinking, that's when I fear you're going to see a wave of grief across this country that people are going to need to handle. And that, you know, the tools to be able to deal with that are going to become even more important. It's like, you know, I really do predict when we hit the spring and all of a sudden people are no longer focused on how do I avoid getting COVID, but now realizing the changes maybe that have happened to our lives because of it, that's when you're going to see a toll of grieving that we need to be prepared for.
Right.
When also,
Just with loss of jobs and homes, and I mean,
or friends and family.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, even the restaurant you loved that you went to, that's
gone.
Yeah.
And I know this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but I did want to add in that one of the things that I'm seeing so much, and I talk about a lot, that grief and celebration being two sides of a coin, that as counterintuitive as it sounds, people also really need joy, and even in grief and even in all the loss. And I'm talking about the joys of like what we're doing here today, which is the joy of being together in community.
Right.
Yes, the joy of connection, the joy of, like, for me, I haven't seen my mom in a year, and it's the jokes that we tell on the phone, the tiny little like shared humor that reminds us that we're still connected and that we can still find laughter. Laughter, I just feel like, is so healing. And we have some authors who have been on who have talked about that. And so somehow also not to lose that idea of how do we bring those small joys to people, even in the midst of all of this loss and all the grief.
Charlene and then Nita.
Okay. Yeah, two things that come to mind, just in small ways of being a helper. Something that I'm finding lifts my spirits and softens the stress is anytime I'm out and there's a clerk, whatever, is to really make eye contact. It's so common, but to use their name, and then when we're done, and say thank you for your service, and then to say stay healthy and hopeful, just giving someone that wish, and even just saying the word hope. I think spreading it in the smallest ways. And the other thing that if I engage in conversations with someone, because looking at things differently helps me, and I think we all need to be willing to stretch and see things differently now, because we're, people are so rigid in some ways. But I like to say, instead of the fear, what if we think of this time like a bow and arrow, and we're not really regressing back, but it's, there's so much power in the pulling back in that bow, and maybe we're ready to launch forward after this, just putting that possibility out there. And, you know, sometimes it, you know, it has no effect, but just to say, we'll say, oh, be open to the possibilities. Cause anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you all. It's so wonderful to be here.
Thank you, Charlene, for being here. And thank you for adding that beautiful, you know, way of being a helper. I know that's something I do too. And it's so important, you know, to offer that hope in the world right now. Nita.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel, and thanks, Sherry and Fred. Oh my gosh, what a powerful conversation, everybody who's added. Well, you guys all know my spin, you know, there is no path and we're on it. So basically, there's only this moment, there's only now. This is all that exists. We have grief for the people we've lost, and as many of you know me, we've had a lot of loss in a very short period of time in my family. Years ago. And now, you know, with the pandemic, that's just happening. So I actually, what Charlene said was something I was going to say. It's very similar. I had a recent experience where I had kind of a medical scare. I ended up having, everything's fine. And some of you don't even know this, but I had a heart catheterization a couple of weeks ago and everything's fine. But my plan going in was to just be as kind and friendly to the staff in that moment as I could. And I don't know if you've ever had a blast, and it wasn't the fentanyl. I don't know if you've ever had a blast in a hospital, but we had fun. We just did. I just was determined to go in and be like right in that moment. And so I don't know about Brenda's questions about books. I mean, I have one in mind, but she and I will talk about that later. But I just think the combination of keeping it real, you know, this is hard, and can we have those hearts open? I mean, that's what both of your books are talking about. I was going to say this a little bit earlier when my family had the year of, you know, it's just like the year everybody died is what we call it. It was like the year everybody died. It was 2007. And in the year after, we were also numb that we weren't thinking about anything but just staying above ground. But what happened for me after that, and I'm curious if that happened for Fred, and I'm sure Sherry has a spin on it too, it's like something shifts in your brain, and I actually know what it is the reticular activating system, but that something shifts in your brain so that you didn't see the opportunities before, but you have changed. And so there's just this shift, and it's kind of what Rachel was talking about. I think you probably can do it more intentionally. I mean, for us, it was more accidental. But now I can see the people who need help, and I'm much more willing to step forward. I'm actually a very shy person, and so my own fears would get in the road, but not anymore. If I see somebody in need, it's just what we do. And so I don't know, you know, open that whole conversation, but yeah, we're here now. There is no path, and we are on it. So.
I love that. I'm going to have you send that to me because I want to make a poster of that one. I love it.
Yeah, you know, regarding what you said, it's interesting. I've always been someone who has been okay with being there for others. I can't tell you I've always been someone who's been okay with having others be there for me. And that's the shift that I have certainly gone through. You know, but I will tell you, whatever it is, and I don't know what part of the brain, you know, there's no going back, you know, and anything that I can do to be a part of getting others to really function in a world where we are connected and need to be together and helpers to one another, I'm going to do my part to spread that.
Oh, yay! I love this panel. That's it. I mean, that is it. That is the best way to put it. It's like, yes, let's do our part. Victoria, did you have something? Okay. And then Linda.
This is kind of like a separate topic, but I wanted to say to Fred, I think it's so awesome that this story is written by you, her father, because when I think to myself, I'm like, I can't imagine my father writing anything, on my behalf or even being vulnerable like you are, because where we come from, the man is supposed to be macho, he can't cry, he can't express how he's feeling. So it's just a different perspective, and it's so wonderful to hear from a father, because I hope I don't offend anyone. I just think that you think most of the times, you think that when you hear children, you think of like mother, a mother like taking care of her child and stuff like that. And it's just nice to hear, from a father perspective, and, from the other parent, how that's affected them, and, again, just being vulnerable. So I just wanted to say that's just awesome that, it's coming from you.
Thank you.
Linda.
Well, I just want to say that one of the things that I feel like we really need right now, and it goes back to Sherry, what you were sharing at the beginning about reimagining, the pandemic and loss, on a personal level and on a global level, make it so obvious that we don't want to go back to the old normal, that we want to reimagine how we want to live now. And that for me is one of the most important things I think we need right now, is that ability, that willingness, that opportunity to reimagine how we want to be in the world now.
Yeah.
Because it's so different, and we've had this opportunity to pause and really think about who is essential and what is important to us, and what human connections are important, because we can't have them, like hugs, So I think that reimagining is really something essential for us to do right now.
Oh, Linda, thank you for bringing that in, because where that also takes me is to the word intentional, which is a huge guiding word in my own life. And also when we're talking about reimagining, I just like to bring in, because I think it's an important part of this whole discussion, which is vulnerability and the courage to reimagine a world in which we can be more vulnerable. And I think that speaks to a lot of what we're talking about receiving help, but also being a helper. They're both vulnerable in their own ways. And I think it takes a certain amount of courage and intention and imagination to think about, how can I become that person who is willing to go into the vulnerability in order to create this world that we're all creating together here.
So Linda and Sherry, you just set me up perfectly for what I was just about to do. So thank you. And again, this is why I love this panel. I would love it if we could go around setting an intention for how we want to be a helper starting now, because that's what we have. And so the fact that you two just both said that, I was jumping out of my seat. I have chills all over my body right now. Okay, so I am going to start with you, Sherry.
Ooh. Well, interestingly enough, I just set a brand new intention earlier today, that there are certain, you guys know I do like a lot of like secret agent projects and secret projects to be a helper. But I realized that one of the things that's missing is exactly what I had said to you guys earlier, which is the joy. I get a lot of joy about being with people. And over the weekend, I was riding a tandem bike with my beau, and we had fairy lights around us as we were riding around a small town. And people were waving and honking their horns. And I realized, like, I want to be out in the world more to help people just find a little bit of joy. And in whatever ways that's going to look like, I'm not quite sure. But my intention is to find a new way during the holidays to bring light and to bring a sparkle, to just be an anonymous, smile for someone.
Oh, I love that. I will let you pick the next person, and we'll do it that way.
All right. I'm going to ask Debbie.
Okay, thank you. So my intention is to be a helper in listening is to carefully listen and, sorry, we lost Fred for a minute, is to carefully listen and just be present and help people through that act, and also share hopefully some joy and humor along the way. Okay.
While my internet is here, I'm going to go next.
Yes, you go, Fred.
Listen, in a very intentional way, I hope to encourage everyone I can to be there for one another. But in a more specific example, I intend to finish my mission and to get gun safety passed in this next administration as soon as possible. That is how I started helping people, and that is what I intend to do.
We're behind you, Fred.
Yes. Who would you like to call on? Fred, I'll let you
Brenda.
Okay. I was hoping you would say that. Well, I intend to find books that will help people, and I'm going to just like open up, and all of your advice was helpful, particularly Fred, that I like the specificity of your advice. But like I had like epiphanies during this panel, which usually happens, but they're usually don't. I usually am not writing things on my to-do list during this panel because it's just, it's just time, like, community time. But I realized that I worked for this gentleman that runs this thing called the Shift Network, which is like a huge thing that has online classes and seminars. And I realized that I can pitch Stephen Dinan, that I used to work for, that runs the Shift Network, like a whole like sort of find the helpers and heal our grief panel thing. And so like I feel all excited because like my intention is for people to like process and heal so then we can move on and grow and then be kinder to each other. And I think that like the more people we can get, so I hope that, I intend that hundreds and even thousands of people get to hear our helper healing message. And I will pass to Yadira.
That's fantastic. And thank you, Brenda. So I think, well, I know that one of my weaknesses is impatience in general. And that's just because I just kind of like, I'm very passionate and like to kind of just like get things done. And so one of the things that I'm working on this week is not just being patient with others, but encouraging others to be patient with themselves and reminding myself to be just patient. And so an example, a recent example would be that my best friend kind of went radio silent for a while, and I was super, super worried. But then it became this whole me thing where, oh, she's not, she's not paying attention to me, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And when I finally got in touch with her, I said, something must be going on. Let me just listen to what it is. And she told me that her husband hadn't been feeling well. And so I said, you guys just should get him checked out. She thought it was just anxiety, but it turned out that he was having a weak heart, and that he probably had COVID a couple of months ago when he had the flu. And so I'm really like, it just reminded me that that especially right now where we're so isolated from each other, that we're going through our own thing, and sometimes we're in our silos and we forget that about each other. And my friend told me that my listening to her and encouraging her to take her husband to the doctor actually did kind of move her to make that appointment and get him looked at. And it looks like it's, he's going to be on the mend. So it's
Good.
Yeah.
Well, good.
And so thank you for listening, and I will pick Charlene next.
Oh, thank you. I'm wanting to just incorporate all of them. I want to sparkle and work with, support Fred, and but the main thing I'm feeling is I want to make sure that I'm really being mindful in the here and now, and when I'm with the person to really open my heart. And even if I don't say the loving words, which I like to do, but with my eyes and with my, let them know I see you and I hear you. And and for people that I'm not engaged in, and maybe I'm picking up on, I'm observing, like maybe they're not wearing a mask, or they're, whatever that I may be wanting to judge, I have the intention, they need love more than they need my judgment. And, I don't want to add to contentiousness at all. So my intention is to remember to pause and just, send some love to that person and stop the judging.
That was a great one, Charlene. Who would you like to pass to?
She's muted.
You're muted, Charlene.
I thought you could read my lips. Megan or Megan? Megan?
It is Megan. You are
Okay.
right. Yes. Well, thank you. This has been a very pleasant surprise. I came across this group on the Reimagine website literally 10 minutes before it started, and I feel as though it was some divine intervention that I found myself here. I will tell you, one of the things that I have realized throughout this pandemic is, in my life, when I've had things going on that weren't going well, or I was struggling, I always had someone to turn to. I had friends, I had family that wasn't going through the same exact thing, so they could help to lift me up and carry me through. And with this pandemic, it was this universal experience where everyone was suffering simultaneously. I am like Mary in that I do not accept help very well. I love to give help. I actually just had a conversation earlier today with a family member about how it is so difficult for me to accept help from others. But I think through listening to this and recognizing how important it is to provide help, it certainly is just as important that I learn to accept help. So that is what I'm going to be intentional about moving forward. And I thank you for this opportunity. I feel like I crashed your party or like your family reunion, so I'm really sorry. But thank you so much for welcoming me in and allowing me to participate.
Megan, we are very happy you're here. Very happy you're here. Thank you for being here. And I totally believe in that divine intervention stuff. I love it.
It was, I just very briefly, I'll share, after 12 and a half years working for the same employer, last week my position was eliminated very unexpectedly.
Oh.
And I am dealing with just a whole slew of emotions and grief. And what has happened is I've had these helpers come out of the woodwork, these people that I have known along the way who have reached out to me and provided support. And I am eternally grateful for, whether it be, hey, we'd like to try and help you find something else, to, hey, just wanted to check in to make sure you're okay. It has been pretty remarkable. So, thank you.
Megan, we're here every week. We hope you'll come back and be with us again.
Absolutely. And I'm in Cleveland. I'm in Ohio. I'm not in Cincinnati, although my dog came from Cincinnati. And I'm not in Youngstown. I'm in Cleveland. But thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you guys are here every day, or every Tuesday from Wednesday.
Yep.
See, I don't even know what day it is because I have nowhere to go. Every Wednesday. So thank you. I really appreciate that. And I will pass the baton to Tina.
Hello. I apologize for the still picture. I've just been going all day, so I just threw that up there. I had a new intention for this year, and I reached out to an assisted living facility and asked them if I could do cards or some little gift for the people there. And so it turned out that what they with the lady, and we had the greatest call. We were like talking for 20 minutes. And she said that the greatest thing would be to give them a card and a candy cane taped to the card. And so, so that's something that I'm going to start doing every year. And my new intentions for, from this call is to build on what we've been talking about here, which is to really make that connection with people. Because, so many of us don't have, we're not making those face-to-face connections. And so every time I go out to the store or any little errands that I run or get takeout, just to really make a point to look at that person. And like someone said, to smile, but just to make a point to see them with my heart.
Oh, I love that.
And I will throw it to Mary.
Okay, thanks, Nita. There's so many great things that were said, and the being present and listening, because I know when I help others, it's not really helping others unless I listen to them and see what they need. It's not what I think they need, it's what they really need, and that takes a lot of listening. But I think my intention is to be present and to be authentic, because that's when I am the biggest helper. When I can just be here in the present moment, and whoever the universe has put in front of my face, has put in my path, or along this journey of the just now, that we're all on the path, that that I'm just authentic and not worry about what people are thinking about me. Just be myself, and then I accept the help when it comes, and I give the help when it's presented that I need to do that. So anyway, thanks. Let's see. Did you go yet? Okay, Linda.
There we go. I couldn't unmute. Thank you, Mary. I actually just set an intention this morning. The sunrise inspired an intention for me because it was just gorgeous this morning. And I realized that this year we have had very little time for sharing beauty together. So my intention for the rest of the month is to share each day some just little bit of beauty I find throughout my day, and share it with others so that we can have that shared connection and that moment of beauty. And the idea that beauty is this affirmation of life was part of that. So I want to share that affirmation of life each day. So thank you. Victoria, I think you're still out there, right?
Sorry, I was just yelling to my mom. I'm like, your TV is so loud. I don't even know if you guys can hear it. I'm like under my like, Mom. My intention, I guess, would be to reach out to people. I think I have a habit of not reaching out to people sometimes, especially when I think that they don't want to hear from me, or maybe they're pushing me away. But I've learned, and I've also been that type of person, that even though I'm pushing someone away, sometimes I need help the most. So I think I want to return the favor for those who are usually there for me. And I think that my intention would be to just be more, as some of you guys have said, more present for people, and just, listen. I mean, this is a really hard time for everyone, no matter. To me, I feel like it's so hard to sometimes almost kind of be there for someone when you're having your own, like troubles, or, you're having a bad day. But, sometimes it helps to just be there for someone in return, and it, lifts your spirits in return, I guess. So that's my intention. Thank you. Rachel, did you go? I don't know.
No.
I can't remember. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to you. I think you're the last one.
Me and Nita, right? Nita, you're right. You didn't go? Yeah. Okay. So for me, my intention is to really be aware and keep my awareness open to when someone is presented to me, to be there for them, to show up for. I want to be open, like we were talking about. I want to be open to see that opportunity to help when it shows up. And another thing I'll continue to do is write my daily aligning with love, abundance, and peace, because I know that has been helping people through, you know, just shifting perspectives a little bit and getting a little bit of that love in a day. So I'll continue to do that. And then, of course, remember the connections that people need right now. And for me, even the people I totally disagree with, showing up with compassion. That's like, I'm keep feeding myself showing up with compassion, because like Fred said, after this is all said and done, there is going to be this like fallout. It's kind of like that after a funeral and then everybody kind of crashes down, and to remember there are going to be a lot of feelings coming up, and to remember to be there with compassion. It doesn't mean I have to agree with somebody, but to show up in that way. So Nita.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad this is being recorded because I need to take notes later. Yeah, so echo, 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 ditto, 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 and let's add unicorns. We need unicorns. We just really need unicorns. I started a Facebook group really earlier, it was like October 29th for all this mind, wellness, all that kind of stuff. And I added unicorns just because we have to have unicorns. So my intention is to live with more unicorns.
Love it. Well, everybody, our hour is over and beyond. And so I thank you all for staying in this for the whole time and showing up. We all showed up and for each other. And I love the connections that I'm feeling. I mean, I have chills all over me from the connections of today. So thank you, Fred, for all that you bring to the table. Sherry, you are amazing, and your heart is just lights up the world. Brenda, this isn't possible without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do, and everybody today who showed up and contributed. You all contributed. So I'm so grateful for every one of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everybody.
Jill, thank you.
Yes, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Have a
Good
wonderful
day.
evening.
Thank you.